Drama off the Florida Keys earlier today as U.S. Customs officials arrested 6 illegal Cuban immigrants trying to reach U.S. soil. Their small boat was spotted early this morning. All of them will likely be sent back to Cuba. There have been a number of similar incidents in the past few days. U.S. diplomats believe a recent crackdown on dissidents by Fidel Castro's government could be responsible. In South Texas, the truck driver who abandoned more than 100 people inside the back of a sweltering tractor-trailer was indicted today on immigrant smuggling charges. 18 of the immigrants trapped inside lost their lives in a bid to make it to America. Those who survived probably won't get to stay. More now from NBC's Don Teague.
In Victoria, Texas, more survivors of Wednesday's failed smuggling attempt captured and brought to a community shelter. Claudia Barrios came here too, hoping to find her cousin.
I want to know if he's here or if he's in the hospital. We're just gone.
Authorities spent the day combing the area near a South Texas truck stop, looking for dozens of other immigrants who fled from the truck.
They hide from us. I mean, we're not trying to do anything but get them some food and water and some medical attention, but I guess I can't blame them for being scared.
The immigrants, up to 100 of them from Mexico and Central America, suffered a horrible ordeal. Locked in the back of a cargo truck in soaring Texas heat, 18 of them died, including a 5-year-old boy.
That little boy, his whole world was wrapped up in the back of that truck. And he died a very horrible death. And somebody is going to pay.
The truck driver, who police say abandoned his rig full of people Wednesday morning, appeared before a federal magistrate today on charges of illegally transporting and hiding humans. According to a court affidavit, Tyrone Williams told police he was promised $5,000 to transport only 16 aliens to Houston. But when he stopped to check a taillight, he heard banging and screaming coming from the trailer of the truck. Then opened the door of the trailer and saw a large group of people. Many were already dead, but among the survivors, Silverio Gomez's teenage son.
Every Hispanic has a dream to have a better life.
But for many, the dream died in South Texas. The survivors, now witnesses in the deadliest immigrant smuggling case in the U.S. in 15 years. After that, most will be sent home. Don Teague, NBC News, Victoria, Texas.
The debate over just who should be admitted to this country is one of the hottest issues around. Does our present immigration policy work, or what should be done to change it? We're joined now by Daniel Griswold, Associate Director of the CATO Institute, Center for Trade Policy Studies in Washington, D.C.
Glad to be with you.
Also there tonight, Dan Stein, Executive Director of the Federation for American Immigration Reform. Good evening.
Glad to be here.
These two dramatic instances in recent days of immigrants trying to come into the United States in Texas and the waters off of Florida, does it tell us anything about U.S. immigration policy, Mr. Griswold?
Well, I think the people who died in the trailer in Texas were twice victims. First by the unscrupulous smugglers who left them to die, but also by a dysfunctional U.S. immigration system. Look, these people are not criminals or terrorists. They're just regular folks committed to work and a family, just like our forefathers. They're coming here for opportunity and a better life.
So what needs to be done?
Well, I think President Bush has it right. When you have willing workers and willing employers, you should let them get together. We need to create a legal channel so that peaceful, hardworking people can come into this country temporarily. Many of them only want to stay a year or 2 or 3 and then go back home. And we wouldn't have this spectacle, this horrible nightmare of people dying for the crime of seeking a better life.
This is very difficult to watch, Mr. Stein. Is opening our borders more part of the solution?
No, I wish it were as simple as Griswold is making it sound here, but the fact is there are hundreds of millions of people, maybe 2 billion people who'd like to live in a country like the United States. And I'll tell you who's really responsible for this kind of tragedy. One, it's the Mexican government that encourages, promotes, and abets illegal immigration to this country because they want the hard currency, the remittances, to come home. Secondly, it's the employers who have attracted them here, who refuse to cooperate with the federal government to verify their right to be here and be part of the system.
Employers would say to you, we need these workers and we can't find them among the American population.
Yes. Let me tell you, the patriotic thing to do is to hire Americans who are here and available. There's 6% unemployment, lots of Americans, millions of Americans out of work. And look, it's simply not true. Which employers, if they can get the opportunity to use illegal immigrants to bid down and hold down wages, will do it. And the third group that's responsible are the politicians who keep talking about amnesty that attracts people here in the hope that they're going to get a green card. Well, there's a solution to the problem. Employers should be fined and penalized for hiring illegal workers.
We've tried that.
No, we
Doesn't
haven't
work.
tried it, Dan. And a libertarian anarchist like yourself knows full well
I'm not an anarchist. I want rule of law.
that the employers have been fighting for 20 years the enforcement of employer sanctions. We don't have any interior enforcement. And think about Homeland Security. If a whole truckload of these guys got in, you can't stop terrorism if you don't control illegal immigration, and the administration has no plan to stem the tide of illegal immigration.
The average American, Mr. Griswold, is very concerned about Homeland Security. They're very concerned about open and porous borders.
Yes.
Shouldn't they be?
Well, we have spent billions of dollars trying to keep workers out of this country. I think we should spend those resources on keeping terrorists out. These people are not a threat. You know, if we had a legal channel...
Well, Coast Guard officials felt that they were. In fact, they said that the 6 immigrants coming in from Cuba were wielding machetes and oars, and in fact, they did feel threatened.
Well, they were fleeing a tyranny, and they're probably going to be jailed or executed when they go back to Cuba.
You don't know that.
But
well, Mr. Stein, relatives of the men in Florida today say they are very concerned about what might happen if they come back. Last month in Cuba, 3 men accused of hijacking a ferry were executed by a firing squad. What about those concerns of those families if those men are sent back?
Look, we always have to be careful about making sure bona fide asylees are not returned to danger. But remember, we have a discriminatory policy in favor of Cubans vis-a-vis the rest of the world. If they set foot on land, they get to stay. Nobody else anywhere in the world gets that kind of treatment. And Fidel Castro has consolidated his tyranny by encouraging people to leave every time he feels the political heat. If you want to encourage a change of government and free market capitalism in Cuba, you want to encourage people to stay there and fight for political change. And we haven't done that since 1959.
Dan Stein didn't like the Jews being able to flee Germany. He wanted to send them back to Germany.
What kind of a comment is that, Dan?
Well, it's true.
All you're trying to do is obscure the issue.
Now,
we have a policy with respect to Cuba. I'm offended by that remark, as usual.
There were 800 Jews who wanted to come into this country on the St. Louis, and we were sending them back. Now, for 15 years,
not only are you so far off the mark factually and deeply offensive by the suggestion of your comment, nobody has proved that anybody who's coming here from Cuba in the last 5 or 6 months is a bona fide political asylee. What we need is one refugee asylum law that applies to everybody, and the rule of law that discourages people from gimmicking the system to jump ahead of the line. And there's nothing wrong, nothing un-American about that.
For the last 15 years, we have tried Dan Stein's policy of pouring billions of dollars, tripling the number of border agents. All we've succeeded in doing
you want
is
anarchy.
diverting the flow of people.
One of the suggestions by the administration, Mr. Griswold, is tougher enforcement of laws against smugglers. Asa Hutchinson now heads the part of Homeland Security that deals with these border issues. And he suggested yesterday, for example, that whoever is to blame for what happened in Texas for the deaths of those people, including some kids, ought to maybe face the death penalty. Is part of the solution tougher enforcement?
I agree. The full force of law should be down on smugglers, but because of our policies, we have forced these immigrants to turn to smugglers. If we had a legal channel for them to come in, they wouldn't be these deaths on the border. Since 1995, 2,000 people have died, men, women, and children,
absolutely not in the real world,
trying to come into this country. If we had a legal channel, they wouldn't be dying on the border trying to come into this country.
What do we do in the meantime, Mr. Stein? Because it is so disturbing to see the scenes that we've seen in the last 2 days. Certainly 2 grown men treading water, trying to find their way to freedom. And then you have innocent people in the back of a tractor trailer, again, some of them children who came there not of their own accord, and they die. What does the United States do about that? Immediately.
We immediately have to send a signal around the world that if you come here illegally, you will not be allowed to stay. With state and local cooperation, enforcement in local communities all across the country. We need to have interior law enforcement. We obviously have obligations to promote economic development overseas, but listen, with 800 million more people on the planet every 10 years, most of whom would like to live in a country like the United States, we can't just open the floodgates, look at the cost of education, housing,
we need to have
infrastructure.
A legal system for them to
Dan
Stein from the American Immigration Reform Federation, and also Daniel Griswold from the CATO Institute Center for Trade Policy Studies. Gentlemen, we are out of time, but thank you so much for adding to this important debate.